you'd please rise to honor our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Leary?
Here.
Ms. Martin?
Here.
Mayor Murphy?
Here.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Here.
Ms. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Conway?
Here.
Mr. Gignac?
Here.
7 present.
Thank you. First, we have the minutes, approval of the minutes of the regularly scheduled meeting of Wednesday, August 21st, 2013. Moved to approve by Ms. Ross Sikowicz, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have permission to enter. Permission to enter for September 4th, 2013. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Assessment Technology Incorporated in the amount of $59,000 to provide the Galileo K-12 online tool to develop, administer, and use customized standards-based tests and access multi-level disaggregated reports based on student demographic information that teachers can link to classroom instruction. That means to test kids and then to see what the data means. Funds provided by the school department local budget. To Community Training and Assistance Center Incorporated in the amount of $117,600 to provide professional development training to include support for priority schools to implement the standard-bearer school improvement process and to align curriculum and instruction. Funding provided by the Race to the Top grant. To Julie Charette in the amount of $8,800 to provide professional development and support to new teachers in the Lowell Teacher Academy during their first 3 years of teaching to align curriculum, instruction, and assessment to mass frameworks and the Common Core standards. Funding provided by the Race to the Top grant. To Deborah Kopkowski in the amount of $13,000 to provide professional development for administrators and classroom special education staff who will learn key components related to the implementation of standards-based curricula aligned to the Common Core standards. Funding provided by the Race to the Top grant. To the International Institute in the amount of $18,900 to provide for refugee community liaison interpreters who provide the school department and schools with bilingual and bicultural assistance to facilitate homeschool connection in the language of new refugee groups. Funding provided by the Title III grant.
Thank you. What's the wish of the committee? Moved to approve by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Gignac. Roll call, please.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Next, we have memorials. First, Mrs. Ann M. Golden, mother of Timothy Golden, former Lowell School Committee member. And Claire Tarpey, aunt of Assistant Superintendent Claire Abrams, School Improvement Coordinator James Neary, and music teacher at the Wayne School, Patricia Neary. If you please rise in a moment of silence to darken chambers. May they rest in peace. Next, we have under motions. First motion by Kristen Ross Sikowicz. Request the superintendent create a library of standardized district-wide forms to be made available on the Lowell Public Schools website in order to provide our school families greater access to Lowell Public Schools. Seconded by Ms. Martin. Ms. Ross Sikowicz.
Thank you, Mayor. I certainly see this as a significant time saver for many families who are very busy, working, sports, family obligations, and oftentimes on the first day of school, us parents are met with a flurry of documents that we must take a lot of time to fill out, particularly if you have multiple children. So what I envision is, your standard releases, your medical emergency forms, your medication forms, sports releases, and so on. And at this point, each school, by and large, have their own set of forms. And I would even recommend that the forms be fillable online and be able to be emailed back to the school directly, again, saving time, and certainly would mitigate some challenges that I'm sure staff encounter when they try to enter the data into our data systems and reading handwriting that is sometimes, I'm sure, very questionable. So that's the gist of the motion, and I look forward to seeing this come to fruition.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Mr. David Conway, ask the superintendent to send a letter of thanks to the USTA for their generous contribution to provide tennis equipment for our school system. Also, to send a letter of appreciation to Coach Jennifer P. Carey for her initiative in creating this partnership with the USTA. Seconded by Mr. Gignac. Mr. Conway?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that we've often talked about our partnerships that we have in the city of Lowell and how very proud we are of them, and the usual partners, UMass and Middlesex and the nonprofit and the business community. But I think that certainly recently we have extended out to other types of partnerships too, and this happens to be one of them. Back a few years ago, I know the USTA came to Lowell, and I think there was an attempt that was made to create a partnership, but that somehow fell by the wayside. And Coach Jennifer Carey has reached out, and I'm certainly glad that she has, because obviously she's somebody that is known in that field, in the tennis field nationally, and therefore was able to get U.S. Tennis Association back to Lowell and back to the table. And they have made an incredible partnership with us right now by contributing for our schools 450 rackets so that our kids can be introduced to the sport of tennis, which I think is absolutely incredible. So I think that because of that, they certainly need to have a letter of appreciation, and also a letter of appreciation to Coach Carey for initiating this partnership, which I think is really going to help our kids going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Ms. Kristen Ross-Sikowicz. Request the superintendent create an online Lowell Public School pre-registration portal through the district's website. Seconded by Ms. Scott. Ms. Ross-Sikowicz.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'd done a bit of research online, and actually this had come up as a search term on my own website, and I found it interesting. And so I had done some research on it, and many other districts in the state actually offer this feature. The Needham, Shrewsbury, Wellesley, Boston, Pembroke all offer the option to be able to register or pre-register their children online. And certainly it saves a lot of time, again, for the parent, for that parent that, say, works a full-time job and has a great deal of difficulty taking time off to actually take a morning out to go down to the Family Resource Center and sit for a couple of hours and wait to be seen and to register their child. And I think also having an online platform would certainly allow a direct link to our online video, our virtual tours that are currently on our website, as well as the video tours that are coming online this year. So in addition, I find it that this opens up a whole nother sort of menu of online registration pieces that we could offer down the road. One is, registering your child for transportation. Another would be in other districts, they actually register, parents can actually go in and register in advance for parent-teacher conferences. So, I mean, there's a whole world out there that we really need to be taking advantage of, and really it's to make our parents and our families' time, or really easing their access to the system. And, part of the superintendent's evaluation, or part of the superintendent's goals for this year, for every year, really is to engage our parents more. And what better way to do that than using our brand new website with a fantastic platform. All the features are there, and I know that there is software out there that can certainly accommodate what we have in place already. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Mr. Robert Gignac. Request the superintendent provide recommendations to the committee in regards to updating the anti-bullying policy. The recommendations should reflect changes made to Chapter 71, Section 370, enacted into law by the state legislature in July of 2013. Seconded by Mr. Leary. Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As my motion states, in July, the state legislature amended the anti-bullying bill to include not only students bullying students, but to expand bullying from staff and students bullying other students. So this is just a way to update our language and to ensure that our students and staff are protected. We don't hear about it in Lowell with staff doing bullying students, but we do hear it across the country. So this is just a way to protect our students. And as I said, the state legislature has passed this, and I would just like a recommendation from the superintendent to move forward.
Thank you. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Gignac. We are at the stage where we're working on the new policies that then become presented. Assistant Superintendent Durkin's office is working on the new updates, and that's how that happens when the legislature makes any amendments or new policies. That goes it's usually always in the Office of Student Services when it's safety and whatnot, and then that office is looking at that. So we will, in fact, then either present it to the committee as a whole on the floor or have a subcommittee for student support services to look at those amended pieces. But thank you for bringing that attention to this particular motion, and we'll continue our work and get back to you as soon as we can.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, I support the motion. I'm amazed that we have to have this kind of legislation, but certainly we would all support it. I would just like to say, as you are looking at the bullying policies, and as we look at, again, as my colleague has mentioned, moving more and more into using technology, I'd recently heard a report that in the Boston Public Schools, they're implementing a program at this point that allows students to use text messages to be able to report incidents of bullying, whether to themselves or to classmates, and the results have been that, students are more likely to share this information when they can do it, in an easy fashion and in a somewhat, private way. So it is, as we look at the overall policies, I'd appreciate if we could look at some ways that we may be able to introduce, whether it's a bullying hotline or something along those lines that we want to make it as easy as possible for young people to be able to share this information with, caring adults who can address the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Mr. Robert Gignac. Request the superintendent work with the proper state agencies to ensure that the district is prepared to begin federal background checks during the hiring process. Seconded by Mr. Conway. Mr. Gignac.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. This is also something that has been discussed for a number of years, and finally, I know the state is working to select a vendor at this point to get this process to begin. I just wanted to bring this to the superintendent's attention to make sure that we are in the process and that we're prepared once the state selects a vendor, that we're able to enroll into this process during the application process. I spoke with some people at the state about this because this is something I was looking into 2 years ago when I ran. And one thing that they mentioned I should recommend to you is that we add the language to the application now. That way, when this is adapted, the language is already there, so the applicants know that they will be queried, and now a federal background check will be taking place. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Gignac, you may know this answer even before the superintendent. My understanding was that the federal background checks required fingerprinting. Okay, so basically we'd need to be doing a physical, people would know that they were going to be having to go through this. Would we be able to, and this may already be in place, I know currently our query checks run, I believe we're on a 3-year cycle. Madam.
Madam Superintendent.
Thank you. No, the Cory checks are annual. We redo the Cory checks, and we, if there is any discrepancies, we run them again. So we do that for volunteers or field trips. So they're annual Cory checks, and that's been the case for a little bit of time.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Ms. Kim Scott. Request the superintendent report on the current membership status of the following groups and provide a plan to expand the membership of the Citywide Parent Council, the Special Education Parent PAC, and the Parent Advisory Groups and the Student Advisory Groups. Seconded by Ms. Ross Hickwish. Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take each one of them separate. The Citywide Parent Council, I just found the bylaws. It's been in existence since 1987. I'm proud to have served on the Citywide Parent Council with many other involved parents in the city. It's a very worthy organization, and I would just ask that the recruitment of 2 representatives at each school still be handled in a very diligent manner, that we do outreach to the PTO groups to try to fill those positions. The mission of the group is to open a dialogue between parents, administration, and the school committee. Very worthy. The second group, the special education PACs, are a state law in Massachusetts. They're required for all public schools. I provided the information about the special education PACs to several parents that were not aware of them at all. I did find online that it does say that they meet at the Butler School on the 3rd Thursday of the month at 7 o'clock. I would just ask that more outreach or information be provided to parents. And the site-based councils. I sat here a few years ago. Jackie Doherty made a motion at that time that we had made sure that we were following the mass law, that we had site councils at all schools. I would hope that's the case today. I did just want to, ask that a copy of the state law be provided to all the principals. There were some things that I was not aware of in it, such as the 48-hour notice with the city clerk, that the teachers were supposed to be elected as well as the parents by the sitting PTO group. So that's just something to take a look at. And then the last group was the student councils. Some of the middle schools have student councils. It's my understanding that they don't all have student councils. I think the students should have a voice in their school, and be part of the democratic process. So I would just ask that we get a report on, ways that we may be able to expand the membership of all of these groups to include all, students and parents in the decisions in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Ms. Kim Scott. Request the superintendent report on the behavior intervention programs being used at the individual schools and how the success of each program has been measured. Seconded by Ms. Martin. Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I made this motion after touring the schools with Ms. Ross-Sikwich, and we asked them what behavior program they were using. All of them were using different positive behavior intervention programs. I'm sure that one size doesn't fit all for all the schools and that there's different reasons for their choices. But my only question was, how do we measure the success of the program? What outcomes are there? Are we having less office referrals by using one program over another, and how that communication goes back and forth between the principals? So if we could get a report on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Ms. Kim Scott. Request the superintendent develop and implement a district-wide plan for intervention for non-attendance. Seconded by Ms. Martin. Ms. Scott.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. I made this motion after we learned, it was brought to all of our attention on the committee, that one of our schools had introduced their own attendance policy. First, the fact that the policy differs from the approved Lowell Public Schools handbook was not acceptable to me. I understand that it's difficult for staff to teach students to pass the MCAS exam when they're not in the class, and that it must be very frustrating. With that being said, the Lowell School Committee policy needs to be followed or amended with the approval of the committee and with information from our Student Support Services Department. I also would not want to have different policies at different schools. I'm looking forward to the superintendent providing recommendations on whether district-wide changes need to happen to our policy on attendance and truancy, or whether or not we need wraparound services provided or more social services at certain schools. Thank you.
Mr. Conway.
Yeah, just very quickly, I certainly agree with this, excuse me, with this motion. There has to be, you have to have consistency when you're dealing with the attendance policy. You cannot vary from school to school. And I think that certainly it is something that it's a constant struggle for the administration and teachers and parents to make sure that their students do get to class and stay in class. And I think that sometimes what's important too is for the leaders of these schools to get a little creative and to come up with some incentive programs, positive incentive programs. And, not always looking at the negative side of things. And obviously, we have to discipline students. However, I think if we also introduce, on a parallel, we introduce positive incentives, they work. I've seen it happen before. And I would hope that they would be certainly willing to take a look at some ideas. And where can they get these ideas from? Right from their staff, right from parents. Ask them. They will have the ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, I agree 100% that the district policy is a district policy, and I have been working directly in one particular building. However, I've met with Assistant Superintendent Durkin, and we're going to be looking and making sure across the entire system that school committee policy, it is not the intention of this administration, nor the building administration to go against the policy, but we just want to make sure it's followed to the letter of the law. So that's what we're going to look at specifically. In the particular case of do we have to relook at certain policies, I believe we may have to do that. There are a couple of things, and I spoke to Ms. Rosikowitz and Ms. Scott, because that's those two subcommittees, the policy subcommittee as well as the student support service subcommittee, is we may want to relook at aligning the high school attendance policy all the way down to the expectation of what we look at for attending school to be able to achieve success in the workforce and academically both. We may want to look at the long-term summer school, the retention policy, which is you can have up to 19 to 26 days. There's lots of policies that I think are worth looking at, but in no way, shape, or form should we be doing anything that veers from the policy of the Lowell School Committee. And I want to clearly let you know that I will be looking at that specifically. So through visits to school, supervision, and evaluation, we will definitely make that the center of the plate because it's very important. And so I welcome any questions or concerns, but I will say that those are the things. If policies have to change because we're not able to reach, the last thing I wanted to say is the District Attorney Marion Ryan has sent a letter out just recently. I will forward to you in the weekly updates, but I've already sent it to schools and had it translated. It is a letter of the parents' responsibility for attendance, and it has an attachment to it, and so we're translating that. I think we're still waiting for the Khmer translation to go to families about how the important pieces are, and then what, in fact, are the responsibilities of parents. So that will be going out, and I will send it your way with the admin updates tomorrow.
Thank you. Mr. Leary and then Ms. Scott.
Just quickly, I think, though, obviously the school committee policy should be consistent through every grade. But I also got to say, you got to appreciate principals that are proactive in trying to reach certain goals. And I think the school we're talking about, if we can all recall, that school was close to being taken over and managed by the state, and now is probably going to be a level 1 school. So if there's going to be a mistake made and one can learn from it, I think it's good to make some mistakes by being aggressive. I do think it's good to listen and take a step back and look at policies. But I think it's also important to note that we're asking principals and teachers and parents to really help deliver for their kids. So we got to take a step back away from some of the issues in terms of, hey, you sent this out without school committee, policy. But hey, you know what? You're right. We need to be proactive in terms of getting kids in the classroom and taking a look at those root causes. Why a student's not there? Is it because the parent is derelict in their responsibility? As you're articulating from the DA, what is a parent's responsibility? The principal, I think, though, is key here. If you're going to criticize somebody, I don't think you should criticize for overreaching. I think you step back and say, here's where we need to refocus. We're here to work with you as opposed to working against you. Thank you.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I did have a copy of the letter from the Attorney General's office, the District Attorney's office. And the only comment that I would make as far as sending the letter out, I think it's an excellent letter that gives the parents the responsibilities and everything. But the only thing I would add is how we outreach to parents that just cannot get their children to go to school. So I don't know whether or not that can be added in, what kind of help we offer or what type of outside agencies that offer any support that we might be able to incorporate into that letter when you send it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. I think we've had some great ideas expressed, and it's certainly an area that this committee and the district as a whole have to be paying attention to. Just a few quick thoughts. I would echo some of the thoughts of my colleagues that it does need to be clearly stated that our policies need to be adhered to. I understand the thought process behind this, but I think it needs to be a very clear message that the policies exist. They have room for creativity, but only to a certain point. And I think we need to be aware, and I think staff at every level need to be aware of exactly where the line is. I think that's, critically important. I think the idea that this has, and I know it's been an ongoing conversation, but I think this is a specific area within our policies that does warrant a fresh look at every level. I agree, from high school straight down. Our policies, they need to be living documents that can reflect what our school district really needs. And I think in terms of attendance, I think we all recognize that it is the single biggest indicator of success for a student. They're just being in the seats makes a huge difference. So it's certainly something we need to pay attention to. And finally, I'd like to say, the idea of incorporating into this letter real-world suggestions for parents who may find themselves in this situation. Having sat through a lot of suspension hearings and expulsion hearings, I can remember very clearly a parent telling us that, he dropped his son off at Lowell High School every morning, and he watched his son walk into Lowell High School every morning. And every morning, his son walked out the back door, and that was it. And there was nothing, the father was really in an incredibly difficult situation. And no, it wasn't my father. But I do think that giving parents some additional resources would be a huge benefit. And finally, the idea of building our policies and encouraging our administration at the school site level to come up with positive, reinforcing activities, prizes, whatever we need to do in creative ways. We do a lot of disciplining, and we do a lot of kind of, slaps. It would be nice if we could build in more and more some positive reinforcements for our students and for our families who are really performing to encourage them to continue that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gignac?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something that we talk about often throughout the year, and one thing that I think we should do is when the superintendent's meeting with her leadership, she's meeting with the principals. It's known that different schools deal with attendance in different ways. That's a fact. And we need to look at what's working and what's not working. And I realize that some principals might be more comfortable with the different policy. However, that's what we need to do. We need to have consistency district-wide, and as Ms. Scott had mentioned, the policy needs to be followed, but if it needs to be amended, that needs to be brought to our attention. So that way, if the principals have recommendations to you, Madam Superintendent, then you can weed through them and bring them to us. That way, we can see what's working, what's not working, because none of us up here are educators, and we don't know exactly what's working. We might have ideas on how to address attendance, but the people that are, that's funny, huh, Mr. Mayor? We might have ideas on what's working, but unless you're in the building, you don't know. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for laughing.
Mr. Conway, a former educator.
Thank you. He must have forgot about those 37 years, I guess. But anyways, I think what's important too is to keep in mind when we're sitting here now as a school committee and we're talking about helping staff with the attendance problems. And I think that talking about positive reinforcement, and I hate to say something a little negative on this, but, back a number of years ago, I came up with a policy, a procedure, that improved attendance incredibly so at the high school and cut down on the cutting and also improved on college admission. And I know the staff was extremely happy about it. And I was called in front of the school committee. And I thought it was, and I can remember calling up one of my colleagues now and asking why I was coming down here. And it was I think you just wanted to congratulate you on doing a great job with the attendance policy. It was something creative. It reached ABC News on Peter Jennings, and I know I was very pleased with it. And yet, there's a program that was very successful, and it has just faded away. The administration did not pick up on it. That's number one. Number two, I had to come in front of this school committee, not this particular school committee, but I was basically battered from pillar to post over the program. And I can remember going back to my desk the next day saying, why did I do this? This was crazy. And I had more staff members come in, teachers, administrators, and said, if I ever had a good idea, I would certainly never bring it forward after what you had to go through with. So I think there's something to be learned on that. So if somebody does come up with a good idea, a positive idea, and it might not be the magic bullet that's going to solve all the attendance problems and all the cutting problems in every one of the schools, but I think it's important that we encourage those individuals, that each and every one of those principals and that central administration and the school committee encourage ideas coming from the staff that are creative. And not all those ideas might be successful, turn out to be successful. But that's the important thing, is to pat someone on the shoulder and say, hey, that was a great job. And I think when we do that as a school committee and a central administration and as principals, I think you'll find more and more people coming forward with ideas, because I think there's plenty of them out there. All we should do at this point is encourage that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have subcommittees. Facilities Subcommittee, report and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Monday, August 26, 2013. Mr. Leary.
Thank you, Mayor. It was a lengthy meeting with three primary targets of topic. First was the food service, which we got into just the basic changes that we made with RMARC at the beginning of the year. We plan to have another meeting to go over the complete food service program, have them come in, put on a presentation to the Facilities Subcommittee in terms of what they're doing, really demonstrating what they're doing, and have a dialogue, as we spoke about before, regarding why we renewed their contract and what our expectations were, primarily our expectations of having a full survey done of the student body as well as the parents in terms of what people like, what they don't like, what they want to see, what they want to improve, concerns, etc. But this meeting was regarding to what they've done this year, and I think some of the brief topics were free breakfast for all middle schools are now instituted. So now we have really a K through 8 breakfast everywhere at every one of our schools, which is pretty impressive. New breakfast menus for the middle schools. Obviously, new breakfast regulations were tied to that. Grab-and-go breakfast carts at Lowell High School. We don't have breakfast carts or free breakfast at the high school, but it's something that Airmark is looking to provide, but it's just a question of how is it feasible. So they're going to be setting up carts throughout the high school in terms of how does this work, does it make sense, is it of value to the students coming in, and we look forward to seeing some of that feedback regarding that. Some additional stuff that we had it required to do is raise the lunch prices to $1.95. The Airmark added some improvements to the Freshman Academy as well as to the Lowell High School cafeteria in terms of flat screen TVs. We briefly spoke about next year, if we do decide to renew with them, that a complete overhaul of the high school cafeteria would take place at their expense. We briefly discussed age-relevant marketing materials at service lines, new merchandise pieces at all schools, additional enhancements at the Pawtucketville, the Riley, and the Washington School in the cafeteria lines. We briefly discussed some of the issues in terms of the Freshman Academy, in terms of our people having enough time to get to the lunch, is it working? We didn't have information provided at that point, but at the next meeting, we'll get a report in terms of that. Weekly Connect Ed calls for accrued balances and monthly letters, something that's been an ongoing topic. We're going to address that again when we talk about our expectations with our mark at our next meeting. Something even more interesting is we're providing breakfast in, for middle schools and elementary schools. We now have 6 schools throughout the city from the 20th century schools that are providing dinner. So in a lot of vision, I think the vision of using our school as a whole, our schools as a holistic community center, which has been ongoing in a lot of different, high professionals' thought process, is really becoming to fruition. I think this is one example of doing that, and it's providing a service to our citizens and mainly to some of our folks that are having a tough time. We do plan to have a more comprehensive meeting only on the food service so we can address these issues directly with RMARC. We encourage folks to come to attend. We'll try to make sure it's definitely going to be televised. We want to make sure we get some people in there to provide feedback because that's the only way that we can, as a central administration and a committee, really make decisions going forward. In addition, for RMARC to make decisions how they feel how they feel it's going. That was taken as a motion of report of progress by Mr. Gignac and seconded by Ms. Rosikowicz. The second issue we talked about at length, and you'll see an attachment regarding all the facility projects we've had K through 12. I can go through all of them because it would be just a separate meeting in terms of all the work that we've shared with various partners. Partners from the city side, our DPW folks, as well as our custodians. Hiring the 2 additional plumbers, have rehabbed every single bubbler K through 12. And it sounds like it's not the most exciting topic in the world, but I'm going to, this committee has brought updated bubblers to every school K through 12, which, if you walked around the high school a couple of years ago, you would see some of them in black bags, which frankly was an embarrassment. Not only that, the water wasn't working. So that's been completely updated. Bathroom stalls, bathroom fixtures, completely renovated. Taking the high school alone, you go through the high school, the staff, the custodial staff, working with the vendor that put the floors in for the remainder of the building, they didn't have opportunities to move the furniture into one facility, say the gymnasium or the cafeteria. They had to move them from classroom to classroom. So they did an excellent job really preparing that school for the students coming in. And you could take the feedback from the students and teachers. Some of them were just shocked that the school was that clean. That updated. They were expecting, I guess, nothing to happen. I think we promised things for so long that they wouldn't occur, where it did occur. And I think that has begun to raise the expectations in that building alone. The headmaster, Brian Martin, took initiative on his own to begin painting and working with the DPW to really spruce up the buildings. And taking the initiative of taking basically down the signs, the different flags that were everywhere, the posters, and making it a more professional environment. Taking and painting location directionals, which are, it seems like pretty simplistic, but when you go in there, you're like, this is now a professional environment for learning, a professional building. Taking motions that the committee passed, multiple motions that the committee passed, and installing that security guard position. And utilizing it to its fullest effect. So when you come walking into Lowell High School, you're walking into a professional environment like you're coming into any other school setting or any other professional building. Quite impressive, and kudos to Headmaster Martin for implementing and delivering what our vision for that. In addition, the headmaster, and working through Mr. Lang, we've got the updated doors in the pool. The list goes on, and I think it's a credit to the city, it's a credit to this committee, and it's a credit to our folks for implementing it. It's been a long time coming, and it looks really good. There was a motion for report of progress from us, Mr. Gignac, and seconded by Ms. Rosikowicz as report of progress. The third issue we touched briefly on was just talking about the consultants that this committee voted to bring on to review the school needs K through 12. Facility needs, and how that would relate and connect directly to education. The consultants have begun their work K through 12, sitting down with different department heads at the high school, as well as teachers and the headmaster, different folks from the K through 8 environment, really understanding in terms of where we need to be to have the facilities for our students going forward in the future, so we can be competitive. and making sure we're delivering a high product. Mr. Lang presented to the subcommittee that we would have a full presentation to the facility subcommittee. We're outlining it up for October, but we're going to invite the entire committee so we can all make sure we're hearing and have questions. We can have some of those questions addressed that as they bring in their preliminary report. What we plan to do at that point, once we'd address it, is not only bring it before the full committee, but bring it before the city council to have a full discussion with the mayor and determining how we want to best move forward. So we can deliver the high product to our students that they deserve. So it was a very informative meeting. We will have multiple facility subcommittee meetings going forward, and it's a pleasure. It's probably the first time it's been a pleasure to really be in a meeting where you see the results of what we've been trying to address for so long. So I take that as a motion as a report of progress, and I thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Motion by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Gignac. On the motion, Mr. Conway.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to just echo a couple of things that, excuse me, my colleague mentioned about the high school. I was fortunate enough to take just a very quick visit down there a couple of weeks ago before school started, and I took a little walk around with the new headmaster, Mr. Martin, and I am I'm very pleased at the results of what's going on. As Mr. Leary talked about, it's good to walk through that school for a change and see that the bubblers and the bathrooms are actually working. And again, it sounds simplistic, but students go in there, staff go in there, and now I think they take a look at this, and there's a different feel to it. Also, I think some of the ideas that are coming forward by Mr. Martin and his staff, the whole idea of cleaning up the place, and he certainly reached out and made the contacts with the city side to come in, fix the outside of that school. People drive by now and they say, wow, that looks different. And it looks different because it's nice, it's cleaned, it's fixed up, it's trimmed, and he's got the flowers along the side, and he was telling me about his program that he's going to have for that. He was very excited about it. We went inside, took a look at the cafeteria. Once again, all our students obviously go through that cafeteria. It's a completely different spot right now. By the way, it's red and gray, and he had the color correct. And the tile floors are fantastic. It really does look very professional. And the feedback that I have received, the feedback I've received from staff is extremely positive. One of the things that he mentioned too that he'd like to do is the pillars that are down there in the cafeteria. He said, we have so many people that have walked through these corridors over the years of Lowell High School's history, and being distinguished alumni. He said, I want to put their pictures up there, and I want to put their profile up there, and let the kids know this is what you can be. I think it's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to the next few years with Headmaster Martin, because I think he has a lot of great ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I just want to apologize to Mr. Conway for not recognizing the fact that you were an educator in your previous position. But more importantly, this was an excellent subcommittee meeting that we had a few weeks ago, because we were able to look at all that has been accomplished over the summer. And a year and a half ago, when we toured these schools with the City Council subcommittee, I personally was embarrassed of the shape that our buildings were in. The bathroom partitions, it sounds like a small thing, but they were hanging off the walls. The water bubblers, another small thing, but we went to schools that not one water bubbler worked. And now, probably in the first time in the city's history, every single water bubbler works, unless if something happened today. I'm sure we'll hear about it tomorrow morning. But not just the high school. I think some projects occurred throughout the city that really we should be talking about, and I want the public to know all that has been accomplished. And just two examples, other than the high school, the Moody and the Washington, two of our oldest schools in the city, are no longer neighborhood eyesores. They have brand new windows, new roof, and they actually look very nice. And I know that Ms. Rosikwich discussed it in our subcommittee meeting, but people were actually proud to live next door to such a beautiful building. So it was actually really a great meeting to discuss all of these accomplishments. And like Mr. Leary said, our partnerships with the DPW, the city, the MSBA has been great. So I look forward to continuing this conversation throughout the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rossikwich.
Well, actually, Mr. Gignac took the words right out of my mouth, and actually, I had relayed conversations that I had had with neighbors up in the vicinity of the Washington School, and they were just thrilled with the improvements. They had high compliments for the school system in how they addressed the repairs and the replacement pieces that went into the school, and they had nothing but high regard and feedback for the contractors who worked on the project over at the Washington. And another project that was completed, which I was quite happy to hear, was the posts leading up to the Pawtuckaville Memorial School were repaired. When I was out there visiting last December, I mean, it was very clear. I mean, there were gigantic holes in the columns leading up to the school, and certainly it's an eyesore. And I'm so thrilled that these projects, you know, some of them are very small, some of them are very large, but certainly as a whole, they make a huge difference. And I think it's really important that we continue to have these discussions, you know, on the floor and discussing our facility improvements. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this report? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have reports of the superintendent. First report is the school opening report of 2013. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a report over the last few weeks, especially the last week since the children have arrived. And you all know that we had summer leadership. I reported that out the last time, but that we have been in communication, sent a connected message. We had a newsletter to staff before the school year started, and we have visited different buildings on orientation day and communicated with families. I met with food service workers, and we had an appreciation to our other staff members. There are 80 new teachers plus, so that was more than when I last reported. So the new teacher academy is full of new teachers, and it's very interesting because they're from all different age groups, starting the career as either brand new out of college or mid-career changes, so it's an interesting time. I just wanted to highlight, and I know you all know about this, Mayor Murphy and Assistant Superintendent Abrams and I attended the Morey School, Bailey School, with the Secretary of Education, Matt Malone, and he was very impressed with the school. And I have to say, as was I, but I do know that the first day of school in Lowell is pretty well run across our district, but he was really looking forward to coming back to the school because he saw, in his opinion, the most visible connection. The first thing he saw was the content literacy teacher who was observing different pieces of nature as a first activity. That's the first thing he walked into that Morey library, and on and on. And he quoted that he I think he was going to steal one of the teachers, but he works for the big office, not in the school system, which was very good for us that day. And he had never seen a PSYOP or a sheltered English class. He went on, so it was really very well received. And he would like to come to Lowell. His next visit's going to be to Lowell High in the Career Academy because he knows we're looking at the high school, and he was very positive. So I just wanted to go on about that particular visit. I wanted to make the committee aware of the enrollment statistics. This has been a very heavy enrollment summer. And this is the data that I included in this report was as of Friday. And so as of Friday, we had about 264 new students. An interesting statistic was that 100 students were from Lowell, but not transferred within our school system. So that included, according to Mr. Dakota, either parochial school students, charter school students. As you know, at the Lowell Community Charter School, after grade 5, the 6th graders come to us naturally because that's when that particular school ends. The impact that he talked a lot about was beyond the 100 students that came from out, all the rest were from different states in the United States. It was really a very interesting piece of data. His biggest concern was that we have received within the last couple of weeks, now this is just at the end of August, 23 newcomer students, he said, from many different countries, but there was a predominance in of Hispanics. And so we did start a new newcomers class that at the Riley School, but we are concerned in looking at those numbers. We'll keep you aware if, in fact, the numbers increase, but we did not anticipate. And those are the numbers which we looked at with NASDAQ of getting a picture, but as I said, and you all know as people from the city, that you can't always judge those numbers, and there is concern in that particular regard. We have received an extraordinary amount of kindergarten students. Kindergarten students, according to our data, when we looked at those figures, including the 108 students that were destined to go to the new charter school, collegiate charter school, we had 54 new students, and we also have an extraordinary number, but up to date, and I was going to report out more about it, we still have about 120 children who have not reported to school, so we'll be able to look at those numbers. Of course, it's only the second day of kindergarten, but by the next time we're together, I'll report if there are any anomalies in the data, but most definitely, we have planned ahead. We were told we'd have 200 less kindergarten bodies when we did the study. And so I just wanted to make you aware of that. I will keep you aware of any additions in kindergarten. But as far as the rest of the data, grades 7 and 8 are higher. But I wanted to just let you know that we have had over 300 enrollments at the end of August.
Mr. Leary?
Just, I guess we're seeing, the kindergarten class sizes on average. Do we have like a number determining, do we have a good average across the board of what our numbers are right now?
Again, 127 children have not shown up. Of course, they're still counted, but we have kindergarten numbers after these additional enrollments that were not expected of 25 to 27.
Okay.
And so but like we'll continue to report on that. We also are not sure completely about how many children actually enrolled in the charter school of the 108. Mr. Dakota gets updates. They have told us that the 104 of the children are enrolled there, but in fact, when they go to the school, because it's a different plan with the modules, we're not quite sure. We don't have any evidence otherwise, but we keep aware of that, because if those numbers are impacted in any way, shape, or form, I'll keep you made aware. There'll be a full report the next school committee meeting, but I do not want anybody to be surprised, as the next 2 weeks evolve and more children show up to school. But the numbers in K right now are 25, 26, even up to 27
Even
in one
27?
building.
Is there only one class with 27, or is there multiple?
At this particular point, as far as reporting to school, only one.
Okay.
At one building that I know of as of today.
And that's
but,
with even the increases in the charter school. I mean, that's what the
that's
numbers.
with the 108 children they were supposed to have taken. And like I said, when we have had people that have come back to the district.
Yep.
And so we're going to, Mr. Dakota has been meeting with them consistently, but we want to make sure we do a cross-reference to make sure that where the students are, and then, in fact, if...
That's with adding
not from
4
that.
additional kindergartens.
Yes, there's 4 kindergartens, and the reason why we were able to continue the first grade at the Rogers is because we knew there would be 4 more complete kindergartens, and at this particular point, it's been reported that they are going there. I just want you to be made aware of that, and I will keep you informed.
Just last question, do they study the reasons why folks are coming back in-house? Do we know, is it because of the economy, cost, or, do we have any indication as to why they're choosing to come, Lowell kids, coming into the district? Because it seems to be, it's not a bubble anymore if you're doing your 3rd year. Even if you have the charter school, which took numbers, we've added 4 classes, we're still in the high, 25 is high for kindergarten. It's just not appropriate. I think we need to start thinking about, before the next meeting, specific actions once we tailor out these numbers of what it really is, and putting more resources into kindergarten.
Exactly.
And if it's following up through the 1st, 2nd grade. This is the 2nd grade classes. I have to go through the numbers a little slower, but I think, are the 2nd grade showing the same thing, or are people leaving after 2nd grade? Because that would be our first year of this bubble. So there's just something to feed that once we get the final numbers, as we get into the end of September, beginning of October, developing an action plan to address this if these are real numbers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the New England Association of Schools and Colleges visit to Lowell High School. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make the committee aware that the NEASC date for Lowell High School will be October 18th, 2015 through October 21st, 2015. And so that is the stage when there will be the actual visit to Lowell High, but the Lowell High School administration is involved in beginning the self-study portion of the high school accreditation piece. There has been pre-work that has begun over the summer, and beyond just a point of reference, which is interesting, the former office next to Mr. Martin, the headmaster's office, is now what he calls the NEASC War Room. So the curriculum coordinator is with the curriculum department chairs, and so they're looking at that particular study and reading ahead and looking and see where in fact we need to progress. But I wanted to make you aware that that is in process, and as part of the Lowell High or curriculum subcommittee, we can do regular updates on that particular process.
Thank you. Any discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved by Ms. Rosikowicz, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have a report on the clock on Kirk Street. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion to ask superintendent to work with the headmaster to review the feasibility of restoring the Lowell High School clock on Kirk Street to its original working condition, utilizing but not limited to our many city partners. So Mr. Martin went ahead and received an estimate in the amount of $30,000 for complete restoration of that particular clock. He is working with students from the different classes to think of ideas of how, in fact, to do this kind of fundraising. And of course, as students do, they have some really very interesting ideas. But one or two of them is that there'll be a clockathon on WCAP, and they'll ask for donations and pledges, and some other thoughts about teaching children about the history of the particular classes that were involved in those particular years. So just to make it a school project for that landmark in the city to continue and how to do it the right way. So that's the plan from the high school to date.
Thank you. Any discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved by Mr. Conway, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the Carol M. White PEP grant update. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The PEP grant, the PEP grant, is an upgraded plan for improving physical education throughout the district. It's a national grant, a federal grant. There are two motions here, one from Mr. Leary to provide the writing of the grant and submitting it, and to create a team, a comprehensive team for that particular case. Also by Mr. Conway to develop a team to provide a strategic plan for the writing and submitting of the Carol E. White grant. Thanks to Assistant Superintendent Abrams, we brought this forward to the group that works with the grant writer and other administrators in the district, and it most assuredly meets the goals of the district, and it is something that we're going to look towards. The RFP has not been released at this particular time, but it usually is a winter RFP, and it's something that a team will be put together so we can start looking at this particular goal for the district. And so we will be moving forward on this grant as soon as we know that it is going to have a request for proposal.
Thank you. Any discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to approve the report as a report of progress. So moved by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next report is the summer report for the summer school 2013. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you. This is a report from Assistant Superintendent Janine Durkin with a recap of the summer school initiatives. This summer, we educated 2,000 students with a variety of programs from June 27th through July 26th. And there were programs at the Shaughnessy School, which was from the 21st Century Grant. That was a new program for the Shaughnessy. There was also 21st Century at the Morey School, a 21st Century at the Green Alge, another newer program, Stocklosa 21st Century, which also they had the summer school. There's a refugee summer school program for ELL students through the governor's funding at the Green Alge School. And the Merklin, of course, had their summer school that's part of their level 4 status, a continuation as a professional learning summer school. There was the provisionally retained summer school for grades 5 through 7 was held at the Butler School. There was a Compass program for provisionally retained 8th graders at the Stocklosa School. And of course, the middle and high school refugee program at the Stocklosa School also took place. There was a 1-week STEM camp at the Wang School. There was a math academy for earning college credit at Lowell High School. There was a high school credit recovery program at Lowell High School, special education summer school as mandated by students' individual educational plans, and also the Step Up to Math, which we have had for a number of years that awards children a 1.25 credits into Lowell High. The really interesting part of the summer school is that we did have a great collaboration with the Parks Department at City Hall from the city. They did, as much as humanly possible, combine their after summer school and morning programs in our locations where we had all of these programs ongoing. So that afforded a opportunity for parents to have a full day type of program. And it was, that was beyond the STEM camp which we discussed last meeting. So I just wanted to make you aware that those were the programs that were offered, and I want to thank Assistant Superintendent Durkin and Carolyn Rocheleau, the Coordinator of Special Programs, for this information.
Thank you. Ms. Rossick-Bush.
Thank you. I just had a question. There's one piece in here that mentions that there were a high number of child abuse and neglect reports that required an extensive level of case management. And I wonder, I have a couple of questions. So I wonder if that percentage was higher than you normally would have, say, throughout the school year. I mean, obviously, many more children throughout the school year that you're dealing with, but dealing with 2,000 children, were those reports, is it higher by percentage? And was there any particular reasoning around why those instances were higher? And in those instances I mean, I see this as an opportunity really to be able to pull in other community resources such as, say, South Bay or other community supports to really wrap around those families. And this is an excellent time to do it in the summertime, sort of readying their children and their families for the coming year. So I'm just curious as to your feedback on that, if you can provide any.
Thank you, Ms. Rossick. That is a fact that looking at the students in summer school, that they need that extra support. A lot of children are there for a lot of reasons. I'm going to ask Mrs. Durkin if she has more details about that particular bullet.
Thank you, Superintendent Franco. In regards to this report, as far as the social worker report is in reference to what was stipulated years previously during summer programming. So as far as relational to, I would have to get that data for you, but it is in relation to what has been reported previously with the social worker support that was in place last year.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the special education paraprofessional professional development training draft. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This particular report is important twofold. To answer the motion by committee member Kristen Rossick, to request that I seek out professional development opportunities for paraprofessionals working with children with neurosensory disabilities. Also, in our last negotiation, the committee, in our last settled agreement, we did specifically look at professional learning for paraprofessionals as a plan. And so this first plan, and we are beginning, there are more than 300 paras in the city of Lowell. It is a huge group. So if you look at the second page, we do have planning for sessions on confidentiality and guidance to students. We're going to divide up early dismissal paras from the early dismissal schools, and the later dismissal schools will come together, and there will be presentations about confidentiality and meaningful discipline strategies, and then looking into some technology pieces, strategies of working with students with special needs, and as general kind of sessions. As the year goes on, we're looking at engaging in curriculum and then getting into related services and kind of breaking down different paras by their needs. So overview of speech and language disorders, what that takes to work with children with a variety of disabilities, overview of OT, fine motor, sensory processing disorders. And so this first year is kind of an overview, and then we'll be able to deepen the work. So the initial plan is important, and how we can fine-tune professional learning will take its time. But it is a response to the motion as well as the negotiation of professional learning.
Thank you. Ms. Ross-Sikowicz.
Thank you. I appreciate this. This is terrific, and I'm already hearing great feedback from parents specifically who had requested this type of training for paras in their schools with their children. Now, the added piece to this is, and what I'd like to see over time, is how this translates into keeping more of our kids who might be enrolled out of district and are now being kept in district, because now they have paraprofessionals that are trained specifically to deal with those particular children, and certainly how that manifests itself in terms of cost savings. So I think that's really important data to keep an eye on over time.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this report? Entertaining a motion to accept the report as a report of progress, so moved by Ms. Scott, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have home education report. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Bianca and Mr. Jared Tebal of 14 Smith Street wish to request home education for their child. This will expand the total number of 26 families, and number of children is 42.
Thank you. Any discussion? Motion to approve by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz. Roll call, please.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Next, we have the personnel report. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is your monthly update about that regarding any retirements, new hires, and resignations or promotions that happened within the last month.
Mr. Conway.
Just a quick question through you, Mr. Mayor, the superintendent. Do we have a list of paraprofessionals? I mean, we have a list of teachers, for example. Is there a list that you people work off for paraprofessionals? I mean, excuse me, with the numbers, I think you just said we have 300 in the district. Is there a list?
Yes, there is a list. As a matter of fact, it's timely that you're asking that question, because we have to be able to take attendance when the paras move from their schools to their professional learning places. So we do have a list. We're compiling a list of paraprofessionals by school. We have that. We have that information in X2, so that can most definitely be extracted by school, by kind of position, whether they're kindergarten paraprofessionals or paraprofessionals for children with special needs. So yes,
No,
we do have those.
I think what I'm asking for is the eligible list of paraprofessionals. like we have a list here of eligible teachers.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Oh, that's all right, that's all right.
do that. No, that's not been part of it.
We don't? No, why wouldn't we have one if we've got 300? If we're hiring 300, wouldn't we be working from some kind of a list?
Thank you. Mr. Conway, the difference between the paraprofessionals and the teachers have to have the DOE licensure, and there's a whole bunch of credentials that they have to get on the list to be hired permanently. On the paraprofessional side, the minimum requirement is just an associate's degree or passing the para-pro test. So there's an open application process. Folks can go online, apply to be a paraprofessional in the system. They can look at the different jobs that are available and then apply for any positions that they might be interested in. But as long as they have the associate's degree or they've passed the para-pro test, those are the two minimum requisites to apply.
If somebody went for one of those jobs, a para's job, and they applied and they had their associate's degree, and let's assume for argument's sake they didn't get the job, what would you have a file on them that you'd go back to them, or I mean go ahead.
No, there's two kinds of folks. There's staff that already work for us now that might want to transfer, say, from one position to one school to another. Any of our staff that do apply are typically granted an interview to be able to go from one school to another, but there's no guarantee you'll actually be selected for the job. They would have to apply every year in the compendium.
The only reason I'm saying this is that, I mean, we're in a city of 100,000 people, and each time, each time we hire a superintendent, for example, the question is always asked, what do you think about hiring people from in the system or in the city? And the answer is always absolutely. It's great for morale, and so forth. And I just happened to take a look at the new hirees here and for paraprofessionals, and there's 4 of them. And I would have certainly assumed that we have individuals in the city that would be applying for those jobs, graduates from Middlesex Community College, let's say. And I look at there's 4 of them that we hire. All 4 of them are outside the city of Lowell. One's outside the state. And that's why I'm just wondering if there's some kind of a list. This is something that I just happened to stumble on this month. I don't know if this is something that happens all the time. Is there a way that we could take a look at that and track that? Because again, I think we have some obviously very qualified people in the city, and when I take a look at this, it's 4 for 4 from outside. It's a concern.
Right. The difficulty, and this is just, I wasn't prepared for this response, but just speaking off the top of my head, the difficulty with looking at the credentials on the paras is particularly at this point of the year. We find a lot of folks who actually maybe have a bachelor's degree or even teaching certification that weren't able to land a teaching job that will be hired to be a paraprofessional. So you wouldn't really see the credentials behind just the person's address where they happen to live. We could take a look, going back over time, but there is there's a system now where they actually create an application online. Their application stays active, and then different administrators from the different schools can go pull from that pool of para applicants, at any time that they have an opening.
Okay, because I'd like to monitor this, I think, each month and take a look at it and see if there's a pattern here, or and perhaps I'm wrong, because again, as you said, a bachelor's degree, and that's fine. We have a lot of very qualified people. I'm sure that graduate from the University of Mass in Lowell. They're living in Lowell too. So, anyways, I wonder if that's something we could take a look at, Madam Superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved by Ms. Rosikowicz, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the list of eligible teachers. Madam Superintendent.
Mr. Mayor, this is the monthly update of the list of eligible teachers that's kept by the Personnel Office.
Thank you. Any discussion? Entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have under new business a request in the Master General Laws, Chapter 71, Title 12, awarding a veteran a high school diploma. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was a request made to you and then directed to me to consider as a formal request to obtain from Mr. Alfred T. Buckley his high school diploma, and he explains the circumstances. In 1963, he withdrew from Lowell High School and enlisted in the Armed Forces of the United States. As a consequence, he did not receive a high school diploma prior to being honorably discharged in 1970 and served in Vietnam. As stated in Section 4 of Chapter 71 of the Mass General Laws, the chairman of the Lowell School Committee, you have the ability to award diplomas to honorably discharged veterans who attended Lowell High School. Necessary information regarding this law is attached, and this comes from Mr. Buckley with the appropriate documentation following, and the general law attached for your review.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Mr. Leary. Motion to approve by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Conway. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yep. Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes?
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Congratulations to Mr. Buckley, and we, of course, thank him for his service. Ms. Martin.
If I could, if the superintendent would send Mr. Buckley information and an official invite from the school committee to attend the graduation ceremonies in June. I know in the past, veterans have walked the stage to receive their diploma.
Thank you. Lastly, we have convention and conference requests. Entertain a motion to take the two together. So moved by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Entertain a motion to approve. So moved by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary. Roll call, please.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes?
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Next, we have adjournment. So moved by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. We stand adjourned.